I have to admit, I've been waiting for some new Dead by April stuff. I mean, when I saw this track was announced, I think it was yesterday that it debuted, I was pretty excited. Again, I'm a long-time Dead by April fan. Some of you know this if you follow my past work. In fact, we've spotlighted 3 of their previous single releases on this channel, those being in specific order of release: Anything at All, Better Than You, and Me. All 3 tracks, if you've not heard them before, I would recommend, because some of you might be approaching this video from the perspective of not knowing who Dead by April is, and they might be an unfamiliar name. Some I'm sure you know, but that's been the case in past videos as well from what I've seen in the comments, but some of you might be approaching this as a first name basis, and you've never heard of this group before. I highly recommend them. Again, I've been a fan for a long time at this point. I really can't tell you how many years. Some of you know that, for those of you who followed my work, that I've been spending a lot of time lately in the European metal space. Dead by April was one of the foundational groups that brought me in. I didn't know, I didn't have the experience in terms of what I cover on this channel being like, oh, this is the first introduction I learned about, in the midst of, and we engaged their work together. I knew about them going in. I've listened to all 4 of their albums, every single that's released, even some single collaborations of other artists. I've been a really big fan of theirs. And on the electronic metal space, I'm not always the biggest electronic music type guy. But I have exceptions, and Dead by April has long been one. Maybe it is because, again, they dive so deeply into that metal music side. But for me, and that's what really brings me in as a big metalhead, but Dead by April has always been a favorite for a long time. Since I first heard them, I think, on Django. I think it's when I first came across their work, through Erased. Again, I can't tell you how many years it's been. I don't even know. It's whenever I got my driver's license renewed. It's a weird way to remember, but I've been a fan of theirs, and again, the recent releases have been all great, in my opinion. So much so that I'm still surprised we haven't adopted we've released enough singles at this point to constitute an album duration of length. But, there's groups that are running, I guess, by a single model release as well. I think if we depart from the European geography affiliation for a minute and go to American, Fallen in Reverse, Black Veil Brides as some examples, they've done that where it's not necessarily been an official album. They have always little singles that come along. Or if some might say they're collected EPs and stuff, but they're still released as singles and one-offs, right? But you have some groups, I guess, are turning this direction. Dead by April happens to be one of the newer ones. And every track thus far since Memory has been great. Although only 3 I've covered on this channel, because again, I hadn't brought music on as such a mainstay to that point. It's been a long ambition of mine. I'm grateful that not only over the 2022 year, but into 2023, that a long ambition I've had to bring it in a more principal role alongside other entertainment forms I cover on a more regular basis, given that music for me is such a first passion, has been for many years in my life. I'm really excited to see the evolution of that content going forward into the new year, and it's done very well so far. And showcasing artists like Dead by April, I'm excited to do so. Perhaps for those of you who maybe this is going to be a first impression to their work, I think you're going to like them if you're a big metalhead fan, or even if you're just interested in generally good music. I think you're really going to come to like Dead by April, and I would encourage you to check out their past work as well. And maybe some of you are being informed so you can speak to their credits, in terms of being talented artists. And maybe some of you even still beyond that are more familiarized with both groups of focus. I'm really excited in particular to the track we're looking at today because it has a collaborative model. And some of you know, if you've listened to my work recently in terms of the European space, I love this idea of taking tracks that are combined efforts from multiple artists and being able to gauge new artists as well and learn about them. And that's what I've done, let's say, specifically in regards to Norwegian groups, which is one of the groups we're looking at today, even though Dead by April is Swedish, Mortemia. For those of you who are unfamiliar, that's a Morten Veland solo project. Some of you might know the name Sirenia or Tristania. That's his work as well, but Mortemia is his solo work. He's a one-man gothic symphonic metal artist. Highly recommended if you've never listened to his music. I've covered a bunch of his tracks on this channel, especially the recent releases of what he's offered. But his whole model is collaborations, right? And through him, I've been able to gauge a whole bunch of new artists, not only just in Europe, but also worldwide even. That's what we're getting today, in this case. And I adopted that model to other artists as well, being like, oh, I can take this artist when they do a guest collaboration here and learn about somebody else, right? It's been a frequent thing. The Day We Left Earth is a new artist to me, so perhaps both of us are getting a first introduction if you're unfamiliarized too, and they are, like I said, a Norwegian group, which I'm really into right now. Again, Mortemia, I recently covered Sirenia as well. Like, I'm in a Norway type mood right now, even though I hop all over Europe as it stands in terms of broadening out perspectives on European metal, which is just such a thriving space these days. I can't wait to add The Day We Left Earth to my list, and I am considering them as well in terms of future coverage. I've got a long list of groups I'm going to be showcasing on this channel at some point. Many of you have provided recommendations in the comment section that I've all taken and cataloged, and at some point I'll get to most of them. I'm working my way through, and maybe The Day We Left Earth at some point will pop up. I understand they're releasing some music lately, and so I'll try and give them a chance, but today, let's get a first impression for them together. Perhaps, if you're coming from the perspective, again, not knowing The Day We Left Earth, or perhaps even not knowing Dead by April. And on that merit, I can say I think you're going to really like this piece. Just on faith. I think you will. Let's take a look at The Day We Left, Wasteland, if it's the name of the piece. I have the lyric video pulled up, so we're going to have visualizer to watch as well as the track commences. And if you're somebody that's not familiar with the way I format my content, in this case, Dead by April and The Day We Left Earth have provided a consideration for me in terms of the editing. I appreciate this. I provide the lyrics as well in the music content of what I cover on this channel. I like to accommodate listener taste to the best extent that I can. And so rather than you having to pull up lyrics separately, they'll be available in the video. Typically, I superimpose them in post. In this case, they'll be in the video itself. So let's take a look at the track, though, and gauge it as a first-time listen. Again, it's more Dead by April. On that alone, I'm happy. Let's take a look at this. Real electronic basis. I like it. Sentimental theme. I like the modulation. Oh, it's beautiful. Wonderful pitch. Is that The Day We Left Earth? So I like them already. That doesn't sound like Pontus to me. I like this. Or maybe it's a Pontus and Day We Left Earth overlap. I think I hear him. But this vocalist, wow. Ah, nice. Good electronic ripples here. They're a good pairing. Oh, wow. Great pacing. Beautiful.
Is there something wrong inside my head? My blood runs cold. It's a poison in the water.
This is an experience to take in. It's a great pairing, though. Like I was saying, I saw in passing that The Day We Left Earth is also electronically themed. On that basis, it's succinct collaboration. Good finish. It has an elevated pitch that makes it feel specific.
I'm running out of time by wasteland. Goodbye anxiety. This might be the end of me.
Wonderful piece and great visualizer. I wonder if The Day We Left Earth employs this futuristic vision in their work with a sci-fi twist. in theme. I mean, I don't know. The last couple of videos that we've watched for Dead by April, well, one only with Better Than You, that one's just been like a performance piece. I'm trying to think if some of the other, well, some of their visualizers have had a unique presentation styling, but this felt very specific in terms of a lore and a story with a very relevant psychological experience. Deeply emotional. I do feel it's, in particular, very relevant, especially in the times we live in. Like I've said in the past with Dead by April, and I really feel that this pairing is great in terms of associating each artist. They deal with a lot of sentimental themes. So, themes of love, tragedy, the human experience to speak more broadly. This is a really good fit with them, but I'm curious for those of you who know the Day We Left Earth, if this is something they typically go down in regards to a lyrical route. Is there this resonance and message that is deeply sentimental and connecting universally? I'm very curious to hear if it's anybody else's takeaway from this. But the piece in itself, like I said, is very powerful, quite moving. If you can follow the lyrics in part, perhaps it's a bit hard for you because in some cases, especially considering where it's going to be placed on my video feed, they're going to be really tiny, I would imagine. It's kind of hard to make it out entirely on the video, which, again, the visualizer is quite nice. But the font choice did appear a bit, what's what I'm looking for? Shadowed. Maybe for some of you, you would just reason it out to, well, I didn't necessarily follow the lyrics because I was distracted by a beautiful, not only song, but lyrical, or vocalist balance. Those two artists, I don't know the frontman's name or the lead vocalist for The Day We Left Earth. Was there an overlap between him and Pontus? I think I heard Pontus a bit in the background. I don't know for sure, but the two sounded great. I'm assuming, though, because that does not sound like Pontus to me in direct focus. It sounded to me like The Day We Left Earth. His range is great. The higher pitch, beautiful to me, carried the tune quite well, especially in message and its power. It's a great signal for me in regards to an experience where I get that impression from the artist as well, and that passion and that devotion to connecting with its listener. This piece just has a wonderful energy to it. Again, presented as a sci-fi futuristic picture. But if you concentrate on this deep message, then I wonder, again, with specific terms, it feels quite contemporary. But it really is a bit like a therapy piece. You know, I've said many times, music, especially in the rock space, and this is the reason I push towards this form of art so much, music has such a cathartic, or can have quite a cathartic nature to it for the listener, but it transforms you in your world and your current circumstances. I see this song connecting very well to listeners on part of people going through a hard time, especially if maybe, the song addresses it directly. Is there something wrong inside my head? That psychological internal grievance. My mind is a wasteland. Lyrics go by so quickly, I'm trying to figure out what it says. Do I obey the narrative? Here's my question, fundamentally, because I saw the way that the song noted certain terms. Where did the Z come up? Hang on a second. Bow down for the new generation Z. The wasteland we're in, consuming our minds. And then at one part, I think I always forget the lead artist or vocalist's name on Dead by April, the new guy. I always forget it. He said, "Cancel me, I shouldn't be allowed to talk." Specific terms like cancel, I think about cancel culture, for example, that connection point in contemporary speech these days. Generation Z, I wonder if it's meant to have this deeply relevant focus. Or maybe this is more, I don't know, maybe this is more, well, no. I mean, the music itself, for me, when I read it, it comes across to me having a very contemporary and resonant theme. But I look at the video, I did see this term on, the UFO ship, I don't know what it is, Eden. I think that is connected to The Day We Left Earth's work. I did see that pop up at some point. I don't remember what it was in connection to with them, but I know there was a thread. I wonder if it's speaking to and I certainly see this in the world, a song dealing with deeply personal issues like anxiety or just, psychological anguish, coming to terms with the real world and what you're going through. My mind is a wasteland and I can't get out. It's deeply personal, especially again when I read it for a second time. This will be the end of me. Wow, it's moving. I wonder if this is meant to connect specifically in part, or maybe this is just one interpretation I'm offering. Music can be a very subjective experience to the listener. Is this meant to connect with the way our world is these days, speaking of emotional well-being, mental health, stuff like that? Because, I look at the connection point of like Gen Z, and I think instantly to many, examples that I've personally witnessed of the way the world is today post, well, several years really, but some might say 2020, I would say it actually goes back a bit further than that. And it just seems, and I've said this, our mental health crises seem to be on the rise over not just Generation Z, but multiple age demographics, suicide rates, substance abuse problems, well, abuse generally speaking, domestic violence, issues that are very sad and tragic to our world are skyrocketing right now, and they've been for a number of years. I mean, the rates are, from what I've seen in terms of headlines that have crossed my way, they're astronomically, outpacing, it seems, what it used to be in the past. I do wonder if this song is trying to connect to a contemporary focus on mental health, the emotional tumultuousness of the world around us, on part of the listeners, or more specifically maybe among Gen Z. I don't know. It's quite curious to me. Maybe this is more like a Day We Left Earth thing. I mean, Dead by April, like I said, played around as well with sentimental messages. And they, in fact, have a song, what was it, the single Collapsing. I love that one. I wish I'd been able to cover it at the time on this channel. But that one dealt with depression, right? So even they've played around with this, but this is like... This is a great association between two groups. And even, again, I don't know The Day We Left Earth fully. This is very much a first impression, but I get this sense not only from the music and the electronic bass line, which really worked for me in terms of Friday, and the vocals, but also on the message that this connection was just meant to be. It fits so well. I find it quite interesting. I'd be very curious to hear your experience down below, and I would love to hear if anybody is a Day We Left Earth aficionado. What is your take on this piece? Because you can speak better to that entity than I can, right? Or that aspect, I should say. Entity might be the wrong words. It sounds a bit unnecessarily disassociating. I don't mean it to. I just don't have the experience to best judge them, right? This is very much a first impression. And I would imagine that some of you, it's going to be the same story. And I'd encourage you, if you feel so inclined to disclose your perspective, let me know down below your thoughts on the group as well and what your experience was like. And I hope for those of you, though, coming at the familiar connection I have of Dead by April, that you also like this piece, whether you are a longtime fan as well, like myself, or you happen to be in the capacity of having a first introduction. But I'm really curious, again, like I specifically said, for you Day We Left Earth fans. And I'll get to them eventually. I want to cover more of their work, having listened to that. That's a good first test. What is your impression of this piece? I find it to be a work that's deeply contemplative and worth absorbing, especially on repeat listens. I think it's easily game for that. I mean, the music side was great, very engaging. The vocals, again, incredible in my opinion in terms of the range. I mean, their lead vocalist, because I don't think that was Pontus. It sounded different to me, higher inflection. No shade to Pontus, but I love that vocalist. It's a deeply immersive work that I think takes a lot of examination, but I'm taken aback by its honesty. This is why I love the metal genre so much. There is a rawness and an authenticity to many of the works I've heard released from a variety of different artists. And Dead by April, I've seen this in different strands. But this is a very moving piece in particular. I think for anybody who's going through a hard time, especially on a psychological or emotional or mental health related regard, and a lot of us can speak to that where we not necessarily be dealing with that type of adversity ourselves. And however we're reconciling that, whether we might be going through therapy or connection of others, or perhaps we can take the more spiritual route. I say that from a perspective, I've made no secret of that. I'm a Christian, so that's for me, a threat or a connection point that I see in regards to mental health healing. That supernatural route can be quite uplifting. I'm very impressed by that piece. I would imagine for any listener that's dealing with that type of struggle in life, and all of us might be to varying extents, right? Mental health constitutes so many different facets of challenges in life, and different contexts, of course, are considered in that. That's a deeply resonant piece. One that I think, in my opinion, just like collapsing, I think it's a particularly great example to connect here. I think it's one of Dead by April's most potent works in regards to its resonance of theme and message to the listener. It's deeply cathartic. And to respect to the day we left Earth, I don't know if this is a subject they normally talk about from their art, but this was a connection, at least in my opinion, that was meant to be. These two groups worked very well with one another. Not just in musical styling, but vision as well. This is a extremely good association. I'm very curious to hear more coming off of that from The Day We Left Earth. But I love that song as a Dead by April fan. Another fine addition to their library, and I'm curious to hear more. I always am. But Wasteland was great. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.